8 times rappers walked out of interviews. There are a lot of amazing things about the rapper lifestyle. You get to perform in front of thousands of people who love your art. You get to rock expensive jewelry and clothing. Oh, and you get to rake in millions if you're good at what you do. That's definitely a plus. If you're a famous rapper, people basically worship you. But that doesn't mean that there aren't any downsides to being a rapper. Like all celebrities, hip-hop musicians have to deal with the focus constantly being on them. That might be fun for a little bit, but it can definitely wear you down over time. There's a reason why Kanye used to lash out so hard at the paparazzi who followed him around. You can be famous enough where being famous just isn't fun anymore. Okay, obviously being followed around by photographers from gossip mags isn't fun, but just think about how stressful almost all aspects of being famous are. Take interviews, for instance. You have to sit there while someone who doesn't know you asks you deeply personal and sometimes invasive questions. Sometimes rappers handle this process well, and sometimes they don't. Before I jump into this video though, please make sure to like it and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. It helps a lot. Now, here are 8 rappers who walked out of interviews. Number 8, Kodak Black. Look, I'm not gonna beat around the bush here. Kodak Black has definitely had some trouble with the law. Without getting into too much detail, I can say that the guy has been in and out of jail quite a bit for someone with such a popular music career. So understandably, it's a bit of a touchy subject. So what happens when it gets brought up in an interview? When Kodak was getting interviewed by Hot 97 a few years ago, we're sure that he didn't expect to get blindsided by questions about his upcoming sexual assault case. The interview was going about as well as you would expect. And then Ebro brought up the charges. He acknowledged that Kodak couldn't really talk about the issue, seeing as it was currently in a legal battle, but he brought it up regardless. Kodak immediately got visibly uncomfortable, so Peter Rosenberg tried to change the subject to whether or not the moon landing was faked or not. It was a nice attempt, but Kodak didn't really think it was funny. He then explained that he felt they were just turning his serious issues into entertainment, and then threatened to walk out. When Ebro didn't back down, Kodak got up and left. So it goes. Maybe he and Ebro can reconcile now that he's free again, but I don't see that happening. Number 7, J. Cole. J. Cole is one of those rappers that doesn't really do the whole rapper thing. He's not big on social media, he doesn't have a typical rapper look, he doesn't brag much, and in fact, he doesn't really do many interviews at all these days. He generally tends to keep to himself, and he's developed a bit of a humble, secretive persona. Maybe this interview is the reason why. Cole has always been someone who has centered his career around deep, conscious lyrics rather than being shallow and image-oriented. And that's what's so frustrating about this interview. He sat down for a conversation with KMEL in 2013, and the interviewers were clearly not interested in digging into his music. Much of the talk was in good fun, but there were a few moments where the humor went a little too far. At one point near the end, the interviewers showed him some shoes and were asking him questions about them. Somehow this ended up being one of the interviewers asking Cole a question about his, size. Yeah, rather than dealing with the awkward situation, he just got up and left. The interview had already been pretty boring up until that point, so I don't fault him. That question definitely crossed the line. Number 6, Cuban Doll. It's hard to argue that Adam22 isn't one of the most influential interviewers in rap right now. He has his deep understanding of both mainstream and underground hip-hop, and he always does his research. But that doesn't mean he always shies away from controversial questions. His controversial interviews often touch on contentious topics, but he's generally pretty good at keeping the sparks from flying. That is, except for when it comes to Cuban Doll. She arrived to do a No Jumper interview in 2018, and Adam was pretty laser-focused on the drama that she was involved in. Things were going okay until he decided to ask her a question that involved her ex-boyfriend, Tato. He referenced the Trippie Redd song, I Kill People, which Tato was featured on, and then asked her if she felt responsible for the Shorty Know I Kill People meme blowing up. Here's a bit of context. The song came out around the same time that Cuban Doll had accused Tato of abuse. Adam knew that there was that background there, yet he asked the question anyway. Clearly unimpressed, she got up and walked off while Adam sat there and tried to act clueless. Maybe just stick to questions about her music next time. Number 5, Nicki Minaj. A lot of the times that rappers have walked out of interviews have been on camera, but it turns out that Nicki Minaj actually stormed out of an interview that was set to appear in print, in the New York Times no less. It's one thing to stand up to Ebro, but the Times is another thing entirely. So what set Minaj off so much? Let's set the stage. The time was 2015, and the drama between Birdman and Lil Wayne was still going on. Additionally, Nicki was with Meek Mill at the time, and the beef between Mill and her label mate Drake was at an all-time high. These were both touchy subjects, but the New York Times still asked her what her feelings were about them. She responded that the issues between the men didn't concern her, but also said that it was ridiculous and that she wanted it to be over. Maybe looking to stir up some more drama or get a good, controversial quote, the interviewer kept asking her about the subject. Is there a part of you that thrives on drama? They asked. For Nicki, that was too far. She felt that the question was condescending and unnecessarily antagonistic, and went off on a well-reasoned rant about it. She then got up and walked off. Number 4. Gucci Mane. Here's an old school one that demonstrates something that we have learned from all these previous examples. Don't ask celebrities about touchy subjects, especially if those touchy subjects also happen to be about beefs. At one time, Gucci Mane and Waka Flocka had one of the biggest beefs in hip-hop history. And you can already guess what happened when Gucci was asked about it during an interview. But before we look into that, let's take a look at the history of the beef between these two. As you probably know, they started off as close friends and collaborators back when the Atlanta trap sound was first beginning to gain some popularity. But then something went wrong. It's generally thought that Waka did something that Gucci found to be disloyal. By 2010, they weren't really talking at all. This is exactly what was being brought up by interviewers on Richmond Radio in 2010. They told Gucci that they wanted to ask him about Flocka, and Gucci just got up and left. That was it. It wasn't like they got into a shouting match or anything, he just up and walked away. Even the interviewers were a bit confused. To all the aspiring journalists out there, just ditch the questions about the beef, it's not worth it. Number 3. Wiz Khalifa. Wiz Khalifa is chill. He's a chill guy. That's kinda his whole persona. But can you make him mad? Of course. For instance, he doesn't take kindly to interviewers that don't do their research. Or at least that's what it seems like from an interview he did with a Danish reporter who was determined to ask Wiz the dumbest question possible on purpose. Okay, a joke interview sounds like something that a rapper would pick up on pretty quickly, but look at this from Wiz's perspective. Some guy that he has never met before starts telling him that his favorite Wiz Khalifa song is In the Club. I kinda get why he didn't pick up on the fact that the interviewer was joking. The interviewer then said that Pittsburgh was in Canada. Wiz wasn't impressed. After he said that, Wiz told the interviewer that he was dumb and just wore a suit to look smart. He then called the whole interview off and told him that he was done. To give the interviewer some credit, he did a great job of never breaking character. When he was told that the interview was over, he said that he actually had some other plans as well. Maybe Wiz just doesn't have the best sense of humor in the world when it comes to interviews. Number 2. Lil Uzi Vert. Out of all the rappers that are currently popular in the mainstream, Lil Uzi Vert might just be the most likable. The guy just lives life like he's in a cartoon. He drives around a luxury sports car with a custom wrap featuring an anime girl. He regularly poses with fans on the street and even plays them snippets of his new songs off his phone. He has a diamond implanted in his forehead, for crying out loud. And guess what? That crazy persona of his isn't an act, and it definitely extends into his interviews. Uzi earns the second highest spot on this list mainly because of the fact that he has walked out of 2 interviews from the same interviewer, Nardwuar, and each time he did it, it was hilarious. The first time was in his second ever interview with Nard. At one point, Uzi looked off into the distance and said that Nardwuar knows too much, and he kinda does. Uzi then ran off and got into his car, forcing Nardwuar to chase after him.
Yo, he know too much. I can't do this. What Kanye do?
Lil Uzi Vert in action, running away from Nardwuar, the human servant.
Classic. The second time was in 2019. The interview lasted about a minute before Uzi suddenly ran off, this time without any good reason. Nardwuar chased him once again. Also classic. Number 1. Migos. When I think about rappers walking out of interviews, I immediately think of this moment. It was turned into memes almost immediately. It's just that good, and yes, I am of course talking about the "does it look like I was left off of Bad and Bougie" moment.
Look like I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
What'd you say?
Do it look like I'm left off Bad and Bougie?
Nah!
Here's the context. Bad and Bougie by Migos was an absolute smash hit at the time, but it only featured Quavo and Offset, and Lil Uzi. Takeoff wasn't on the song. Shortly after the song's release, all 3 of the Migos were interviewed by Joe Budden and DJ Academics. Academics said something about Takeoff being left off of Bad and Bougie, and Takeoff responded, "Does it look like I was left off of Bad and Bougie?" This led to a whole bunch of confusion, and Academics tried to reel things in. Rather than playing along with him, Joe Budden lost interest and got up and walked off. In response, the Migos all got up and got ready to fight him, and things descended into chaos. There are so many meme-worthy moments in this short span of an interview that it just has to make number 1 on this list. So which of these rappers had the funniest moment of walking out of an interview? Let me know in the comments. And before you leave, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to our channel.